Hello everyone, my name is Daria and welcome back to my channel. And today I am going to be talking about, discussing, describing, and generally talking some shit about the final Summer I Turned Pretty book entitled We'll Always Have Summer. Now, I bought a copy of this book. And full disclosure, I bought the copy of the book so I could take the thumbnail picture, and then I immediately returned it. I do not want to have this book in my vicinity. I don't want it within 100 feet of me. If you could get a restraining order against a piece of fiction, like a bunch of tree leaves taped together, I would. I have a little bit of a history with the Summer I Turned Pretty book series / TV show. I have always heard about it. I feel like it's one of those like 2010s sort of like nostalgia, early YA teen contemporary romances, that's a lot of words that I just said, that everyone has kind of heard about. And I decided to read the first book ahead of the first season of the show coming out. TLDR, hated the book, really liked the show. I think the show did a great job improving upon a lot of the flaws of the book. Come to think of it, the entire book is just like one flaw. Like there's truly nothing redeeming about the book. The only thing that was worth a damn in that novel was the relationship between the mothers, and we barely saw any of that. Belly is an annoying, slut-shaming loser in the book. Conrad is a weirdo who is just moody for no fucking reason and is kind of a dick. And Jeremiah is just kind of there. Like, he literally exists to just be the fun guy, sort of the opposite of Conrad, and meant to act as some form of competition, not really though, to the guy that she's obviously meant to end up with. And a lot of YA love triangles were like this, right? Especially in the 2010s. There was always the guy that you knew she was gonna pick. Typically the broody guy, the one who was a bit of a dick, and then there was the other guy, the best friend type, and that's who Jeremiah was. He fulfilled his role appropriately. I feel like the show improved upon a lot of things. I think Belly was a far more compelling main character. She had a lot of agency. Rather than everything happening to Belly, Belly was actually making decisions and taking charge in the show, which I enjoyed. I feel like we understood Conrad a lot more and were able to sympathize with him, understanding the struggle that he was going through, knowing about his mother's cancer and getting to know him and the family dynamics a bit more. It made him a far more sympathetic character. And Jeremiah was just fucking fun. I then attempted to read the second Summer I Turned Pretty book, but became quickly disenchanted with it when I open up the first page and I am hit over the head with the fact that Susanna died. There's something you need to know about Jenny Han's Summer I Turned Pretty series, which is that she will purposefully skip the interesting parts of her story. And there's no exception when it comes to this last book, I'll tell you that right now. At the end of the first book, Conrad and Belly get together, and at the very beginning of the second book, they are broken up, Susanna is dead, and we saw none of it fucking happen. Now, I am not going to talk about season 2 of The Summer I Turned Pretty because I have watched it, but I do not have any content or reactions posted about it because I've decided not to post about new struck work on my channel in solidarity with the SAG-AFTRA strikers. So I've watched it, I have opinions, but I'm not gonna share them right now. But I still wanted to talk about The Summer I Turned Pretty in some capacity because a lot of you have been asking me to. So this is what I'm doing. I am going to break down beat by beat, scene by scene, the third book of The Summer I Turned Pretty. I'm gonna tell you all the absolutely wild shit that goes down in this book. And then I'm going to talk about what I think they should include in the show and how I imagine they might adapt it. We'll Always Have Summer starts off and we have an infamous time skip. We have jumped forward 2 years since the ending of the last book where Jeremiah and Belly got together. And in those 2 years, Belly has been attending Finch College with Jeremiah. They have been dating and things are going really, really well. Belly is finishing up her freshman year. She's studying for finals and everything is just kind of picture fucking perfect. She talks about Jeremiah like he hung the fucking sun. Okay, she loves this man. She loves him. She talks about how he is the one repeatedly, that he's perfect, that he's the ideal boyfriend, that, you know, Conrad may have been her first love, but Jeremiah is her last, etc. And then it very quickly, within about 10 pages, all comes crashing fucking down. Because while Belly is at a fraternity party, Jeremiah is in a fraternity, she's at one of these parties for the end of the year, she is in the bathroom and overhears a bunch of girls talking about how one of them slept with Jeremiah during a spring break trip to Cabo. Belly is obviously absolutely devastated, and she goes and confronts Jeremiah about what she heard, and he says that yes, he did hook up with this girl, and worse than that, because Belly was thinking that they just like made out a little bit, he says that they slept together. And this is particularly hurtful for Belly because her and Jeremiah have not had sex. And that is something that she is very afraid of, very insecure about, and now finding this out, she is even more insecure, hurt, and afraid. Jeremiah apologizes, and he explains that he thought that they were on a break. Yes, this is very reminiscent of Ross and Rachel from Friends. I'm pretty sure Jenny Han just copied that breakup word for word. And we flash back and we see Jeremiah and Belly in the moment where they like broke up, whatever you want to call it. And basically it's about Conrad, even though it isn't about Conrad, but it is. Belly is talking to Jeremiah, and she is frustrated that he is choosing to go to Cabo for spring break with his fraternity brothers rather than being with her and her family in Cousins. And honestly, you kind of get the sense that Belly is embarrassed of Jeremiah. Like, she keeps kind of, in her mind, talking down to him a bit. And I think Jeremiah senses this, and he kind of blows up and mentions Conrad in a way. He basically says, oh, I'm sorry that I'm not, like, pre-med at Stanford and stuff, and you're so embarrassed of me. You get the sense that Conrad is, like, a fucking boogeyman in their relationship. Like, his shadow, like, he casts a shadow over their relationship. Jeremiah, Belly thinks this, is this, like, guy who, like, just gets drunk every weekend at his fraternity parties, whereas Conrad is, like, on the pre-med track doing lab research at Stanford. And I'm kind of sitting there like, girl, if you're this embarrassed by this man, then like, why are you with him? Belly then turns to Jeremiah after he mentions Conrad, and she tells him not to, quote, put his inferiority complex onto her. Yikes. And basically the fight just escalates and they go on a break/a break up. And this is when Belly thinks back to some secrets that she is currently holding. One that involves Conrad. And we flash back again. Listen, if there's one thing about Miss Jenny Han, she loves a flashback. And she loves them so much that it really fucks with like the narrative and chronology of her stories. I don't know why she does this so often, but this is just what we have to deal with. So we flash back to, I think it's Christmas or something, and Belly decides to drive to Cousins Beach to sort of be in the house by herself. And when she's there, who else is there? Conrad. And this is the first time that they've seen each other in almost 2 years, and they have not kept in contact at all. But they very easily fall back into familiar patterns. They're honestly very sweet with one another. They're catching up. They spend time together. And Belly even has this moment when she's with him that she realizes that part of her will always love him and maybe even still loves him due to their deep history with one another and their connection since childhood. And this is something that she has not told Jeremiah about. He does not know that they ever saw each other. So Belly takes some time to herself, and then her and Jeremiah meet up. And when they do, Belly sort of asks him, you know, how do I know that you're never gonna do this again? I totally trusted you, and you've broken that trust. How could we ever go back to the way we were? And that is when Jeremiah, this motherfucker, gets down on one knee at the ripe age of 19 and proposes to this bitch. Oh my god. Part of the reason I wanted to read this book is because I knew this was gonna happen, and it was actually the craziest thing ever. Like, it's giving Dawson's Creek, One Tree Hill, fucking like CW 2000s teen melodrama. Crazy. And it's even crazier to me because Belly sits there and in her head is like, I know he's only doing this because he feels guilty. I know that he's doing this as kind of like a way to make it up to me that he cheated on me. And the bitch still says yes. She says yes. This 18-year-old girl says yes. And listen, they're cute. The way that she talks about Jeremiah is fucking adorable. Talking about how Conrad is in the past and that he is her future, that she can't wait to be with him, that she loves him. But girl, this is the messiest fucking thing I've ever seen. This is absolutely fucking crazy. And you know what else? Now that I just said that, maybe it isn't so cute. Because the one thing about this book that is consistent is that every fucking time Belly talks about Jeremiah and her feelings for him, Conrad always has to come up in conversation. It's never, oh, I love Jeremiah. It's always, oh, I love Jeremiah, and I'll always love Conrad. It's like, oh, I love how Jeremiah is like this, and I remember when Conrad was doing this. Like, it's just, in case you weren't, you know, you were wondering who she's gonna end up with in the end, that's a fucking clue. We then jump to the opening of a community garden that is happening in Susanna's name, and Jeremiah, Laurel, Stephen, and the Fisher dad, Adam, are all there to sort of celebrate it and commemorate it. Jeremiah is giving a speech, and then that is when we cut to the first of a couple Conrad POV chapters. He is running a bit late to this opening. He stands in the back and he, has this moment where he's proud of Jer and wishes that he was up there with him. And then he sees Belly and just kind of panics and realizes that he should not be there because he is not ready to see her or see her with Jeremiah. Belly is just the messiest fucking person I have ever read about, because she finds out that Conrad is going to be at this opening of the garden, and she literally says she takes extra time shaving her legs in the shower, making sure that she gets all around the knees and the ankles. She gets especially dressed up, does her hair nice, just because she thinks Conrad might show up. And then when he does approach them, she is fucking giddy. And there's even a moment where she's standing next to Jeremiah and her and Conrad are fucking locked in on each other. It's fucking, I can imagine the scene right now. It's slow motion. They're gliding towards one another. And Jeremiah is just standing there. It's so fucking embarrassing. It's so embarrassing. I think about that and I think about them putting that in the show, and it's just crazy. It's crazy. The group then decides to go out for a meal together, and Jeremiah, on the car ride there, is so excited to tell everybody that they're engaged, and Belly is kind of hemming and hawing about it. I wonder why. And when they're at this dinner at this restaurant, she's so focused on Conrad and how Conrad is gonna feel about this engagement, and break up. Girl, break up with Jeremiah. You don't want that man. You don't want that man. It's crazy the way that she just, the minute Conrad shows up, she just is so laser focused and does not care. She doesn't want to tell anybody about the engagement. She's literally thinking in her head how this announcement is going to ruin everybody's day. And I'm just girl, you don't want to marry him. They make the announcement. Jeremiah does it very happily, and everybody's obviously flabbergasted and shocked, as they should be, because if you have the word teen in your age, I go play in the sandbox. Go play in the sandbox and make your little sand castles and, play with those little fucking foam ABC cutouts. You should not be getting married. Absolutely not. And it is Laurel in particular who comes out with many words of wisdom. Or many, how should I say, insults of wisdom. Because she says that they are being immature, that they are being dumb, that there's no reason for them to get married, they have no business getting engaged. She brings up the fact that Jeremiah paid for the ring, the engagement ring, using his dad's credit card and money. And she also tells Belly that, me and your dad were so in love. We thought that the other person was the one, but you need so much more than love to make a marriage work. And eventually gets to the point that she just outright refuses to be a part of the wedding and refuses to show up. And Belly is just such a petulant child about it. Because that's exactly what she is. She's a child. So she sits there and is okay, well, my mom is obviously just trying to steamroll me into doing what she wants. So I'm gonna call her bluff and I'm gonna, continue with the wedding and get married. Babe, this is not about whether or not your mom is gonna let you, go to the mall with your friends. This is about a fucking wedding. And this sort of game of cat and mouse, Belly sort of being well, I'm gonna do this thing because my mom doesn't want me to, continues, because Jeremiah goes to Laurel and tries to get her on board, but Laurel stands firm, thank God, and it's no, you two are being dumb. Why can't you just wait? If you're in love now and you want to get married, what's gonna change in 5 years? Why can't you wait 5 years or even after graduation? But they don't want to, because they're trying desperately, in my opinion, to hold on to this relationship that is obviously, the expiration date has hit, bitch, okay? The milk is going stale. Just throw it out. So Jeremiah's charm doesn't work on Laurel, and that is when Belly decides that she is going to quit her job, move out of her mom's house, and then move to the cousin's house. And wouldn't you know, who else is staying at the cousin's house right now? Conrad. So she's gonna be staying and living with Conrad pretty much by herself, which is mwah, cherry on the fuck up Sunday. We then flip to another Conrad POV chapter, and he attempts to talk to Jeremiah while they go surfing and sort of say hey, this probably isn't the best idea and you guys should maybe slow down. And Jeremiah gets really upset. He has a lot of insecurities when it comes to Conrad. So he tells them to basically piss off, leave them alone. And Conrad's possessive weirdo ass is I cannot believe he's marrying my girl and there's nothing I can do about it. And why did I give him a southern weirdo accent? Conrad is honestly in this, He's just very bland, isn't he, in the book? Like, I really don't, like, Belly pisses me off, but Conrad is just kind of there. This is the chapter also where we find out that on her deathbed, Susanna made Conrad promise to take care of Jeremiah, which, I mean, I get, but personally, I mean, I think it's a bit weird. Unless she told Jeremiah the same thing, like, take care of Conrad, like she told both of them, like, take care of one another, I think it's a little bit messed up, kind of fucked up to like only tell one kid to look after the other. Like, that's a lot of fucking pressure. But anyway, that's just me. We then get another few flashbacks, this time in Conrad's POV, and we see like what he got up to in California. He was like casually seeing this girl named Agnes, and at one point they have this conversation about like if he's ever been in love, and he describes like being in love with Belly. And honestly, this was kind of cute. He like kind of says it like, it was very reminiscent of that like Pride and Prejudice quote of like, I was in the middle before I knew that I had begun. Kind of like him saying that I don't really know when I fell in love with Belly, but like I just, one day I woke up and I was in love with her, and he sort of thinks to himself, and Agnes clocks it as well. She tells him like, you're still in love with that girl, you probably always will be, kind of a thing. We then get another flashback to Conrad's POV of the motel scene. I don't know how it went down in the books because I didn't read the second book, I only saw the show, but when Jeremiah and Belly get together and like Conrad leaves, and he sort of thinks to himself that he like lied to Belly about no longer having feelings for her and not wanting to be with her, and was like such a dick and stuff because he was like trying to fulfill the promise that he gave to his mom. And in his mind, protecting Jer and taking care of Jer was the choice. The choice was to leave. He had to leave. Then we have a couple scenes in which Belly is trying to prepare for the wedding. She's looking at flowers, she's tasting cake, you know, all the shit that you do to prepare for a wedding. And she's stressed out about it because, you know, she doesn't want her mom paying, she doesn't want Adam paying, and so she is trying to find a way for them to afford this wedding on a budget. And it turns out to be Conrad who is the one who is helping her, who is driving her places, helping her with invitations, helping her, you know, pick flowers and arrangements. And Jeremiah just like doesn't show up to anything. And when Belly confronts Jeremiah about this, he just is like very flippant, like, oh, my dad's gonna pay for it, blah, 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 and she gets mad about that. Also, all of his ideas fucking suck. Like, oh God. He wants the theme of the wedding to be Tarantino. And look, I'm gonna say this now, a white boy in particular who idolizes Tarantino and loves Tarantino, I don't trust it. I just don't trust it. Like, I'm gonna kind of give you a side eye. And that's just, I feel like that instinct has not led me wrong. There's also all these moments where the author, Jenny Han, obviously wants you to see Conrad as this, like, responsible guy who has everything together. He's going grocery shopping, he's going surfing, he's very, you know, sort of the ideal fucking, like, husband material, whereas Jeremiah is just this, like, lazy, you know, privileged frat boy. And it just, I'm not a big fan of, like, books trying to make me feel a certain way about characters. Just trying to make Jeremiah seem like the most annoying fucking person so that Conrad looks better by comparison. They're all annoying. Belly is annoying, Conrad is annoying, Jeremiah's fucking annoying. Like, do I care which annoying brother that she ends up with? Not in particular. Okay, the only sort of residual feelings I have on the matter are due to the interpretations of the characters on the show. When I was reading this book, I was, like, imagining like the characters from the show, and so I got invested. Like, I was imagining like, oh, what if that happened in the show? How would I feel? But like, if I'm just going based off the book, I do not give a fuck about any of these people or what they do. And honestly, I'm gonna try to say this very nicely. I'm gonna put my fan down. I want to know, do people really genuinely like this book? Or is it a matter of nostalgia? Because I have looked back on books that I read when I was younger, and I know that they're bad. I know that they were not great. I know that there were things, even if there were some good things, there were also a lot of bad things. And I can fully acknowledge that while also standing firm in my love for them. Because it's nostalgia. And I need to know. Because I genuinely, like, I don't get it. I don't particularly like harping on people for what they like. Like, I will criticize characters, I will criticize books, but I don't like to, like, harp on fans of the thing, you know? But so I'm like genuinely like, is it nostalgia? Like, what about this book is redeeming, is interesting? Like, where's the investment coming from? I don't know, just a question. So then Conrad decides to try his hand at convincing Laurel to come to the wedding and be involved. Belly's having a bridal shower and she's just very upset that her mom's not going to be there. And so Conrad goes to Laurel and, you know, in the same way that Susanna and Belly were very connected and Belly was kind of like Susanna's special girl kind of a thing, like it says in the show, Conrad and Laurel also have this like connection and understanding of one another, and they're very similar. So Conrad goes to Laurel and is like, look, you don't approve, I don't really approve. But if you don't show up, you're gonna regret it. And Belly really needs her mom, so please come. And Laurel very, very easily picks up on Conrad's love for Belly and that he still loves her. And in the end, she decides to go to the bridal shower, and she doesn't tell Belly that Conrad is the one who convinced her to come. Conrad then has another POV chapter where he goes to visit this like random fucking man who lives in their neighborhood, and the only reason that this scene even exists is so that the guy can then tell Conrad that when you're in love, you gotta fight for the person that you love, and it doesn't matter, you know, if it's family or your brother, you gotta fight and you gotta tell that person how you feel. Literally irrelevant scene. Like there's a lot of scenes like with Agnes and now this one where like obviously we're building up to Conrad and Belly getting together, so we need everyone around them, even like random fucking characters, to proclaim and validate their love. There is then another scene in which Conrad gets injured when he is surfing and Belly sort of helps him, you know, it's the very classic like girl helps the guy while he is injured and like wraps up his like injured hand or whatever the fuck, and they're in each other's space and they almost kiss, but Conrad is the one who pulls away. And Belly's dumbass is like, oh, like it's okay, like nothing happened, and you know, we're just gonna have the wedding and everything will go back to normal and Conrad will leave and everything will be fine. And like, she's a child, Dario, she's a child, but like be serious. Belly is so fucking exhausting. Like it is tiring to be in her head. But then there's no reprieve, because then we go to Conrad's head, and like I don't enjoy that either. So like, what am I left with? Also, this entire book is just like a hodgepodge of random scenes, us like slowing down the fucking pace and literally crawling to the inevitable end of the wedding being called off and Conrad and Belly getting together. Like we know what's gonna happen. And even though this book is short, it's like 260 something pages, it still feels like for fucking ever to get to a point that everybody knew we were going to arrive at anyway. And it's like, you didn't even take the scenic route. You took us through back roads where the only thing for us to see is like wheat fields. Like there's nothing interesting. So why did you take so damn long? That analogy doesn't make sense. I'm tired and I'm honestly sick of talking about this book. I'm sorry. We then get yet another scene in this long trek towards this ending of Conrad and Belly endgame. And it's just another scene that is meant to confirm Conrad and Belly's love. And basically, Belly goes to Taylor and tells her about the almost kiss, and that is when Taylor tells Belly that it was Conrad who got Laurel to come to the bridal shower. And then that is when Belly flashes back to when they were young, and they would go to the mall together, and there was this like glass unicorn that she really always wanted but couldn't afford, and then Conrad ends up buying it for her without her like ever telling anyone. Like he just saw her admiring it for so long that he just bought it for her. Then we have the bachelor and bachelorette parties, and we're in Conrad's head again. And at one point, he overhears Jeremiah and all of his like frat brothers talking, and they're kind of like joking around, like teasing Jeremiah about hooking up with that girl in Cabo and being like, oh, like what was she like? Just like real misogynistic, gross shit. And Conrad is fucking pissed. And he doesn't think that Belly knew about this, so when they go back to the house after everything, he, like, him and Belly go to the beach, I think, and he sits her down and is like, I'm sorry I have to tell you this, Jeremiah cheated on you. And then she's like, yeah, I know. And I'm still gonna marry him. This then devolves into a screaming match and argument, because it would start a fucking argument with me. If I cared about Belly in any way, you bet your ass I'm gonna say something about her marrying this cheater, who literally proposed to her just to make up for the fact that he cheated when they were teenagers. I'll keep saying it because it's fucking crazy. Anyway, Conrad gets upset and he's yelling at her, and he basically confesses that he still loves her and that he's sorry for what happened between them, you know, those years back, and that he wasn't in the right headspace to love her and wasn't capable of loving her after his mom died because he was just so angry. And he's like, don't marry Jeremiah, be with me. And now Belly does what Conrad did back in that motel room. She lies, says that she never loved him, but then the second that she's out of his sight, she breaks down sobbing. And then, the next fucking morning, Conrad comes to her and takes it all back. He's like, I'm drunk, I didn't mean it, and then Belly gets pissed at him. And literally, it's so fucking mind-numbingly stupid. And I'm just so frustrated. Like, all this, like, literally this happens within a couple pages. He confesses his feelings. She lies and says that she never loved him. She breaks down. He comes to her, says that he takes it all back. Then she gets mad at him. And then he comes back and is like, well, I don't know what you want from me. Like, I for my own dignity, I had to say that I didn't mean it. But, like, obviously I do mean it. I love you. Oh my god, bitch. Oh my god. The fight then ends with Belly trying to push Conrad out the door and him saying that he is sick and tired of pretending not to love her and that he's not gonna do it anymore. I literally, like, the amount of fucking whiplash. Like, bitch, my head was going fucking like this. Like, I couldn't keep up with what the fuck they were saying or feeling. Like, it was just crazy. Crazy. This entire book is so crazy and messy. And not at all in a fun way. After this, Belly is sort of in her head about it, and we're in her head with her, unfortunately. And she's just talking about how if she went back with Conrad, she's like making up all these excuses for why she shouldn't go back with him, and none of it has to do with the fact that she doesn't love him anymore. Like, she thinks about how if she goes back to Conrad, Jeremiah will never choose to be in her life again. Like, she will lose him completely. He will never love her again, and never want to be part of her life. And then she thinks about how this is gonna, like, rip all their families apart. And girl, not once have you said that you don't love him and don't want to be with him and want to be with Jeremiah because you love Jeremiah more. Like, it's just like, I can't lose Jeremiah and his love for me, like, kind of a thing. I want him in my life. I saw so many people who talked about how great this book was. And particularly, it was people who were Team Conrad. And full disclosure, I'll say this right now, I'm Team Conrad. But, like, is this winning? Because it doesn't feel like winning. Like, at this point, I don't want, Belly should not end up with either of these men. Because here's the thing. And I've said this in my, like, Summer I Turned Pretty Season 2 reactions, but I'll say it now here because it's important. At some point in a love triangle, especially if it's, like, typically it's like a girl between two dudes, especially between two brothers, the girl very quickly and very easily becomes the bad guy. The person in the middle will always end up looking like the biggest piece of shit between the three of them. Especially when you're going back and forth between them like this. Because you say that you care about them. You say that you love them. But then also, like, you're tearing apart their fucking relationship. At what point are we gonna say enough is enough? Anyway, I'm getting more into, like, my thoughts and interpretation on the book, and I'm gonna leave that to the next part. Let's just stick to the facts. The night before the wedding, literally hours before they're meant to be walking down the aisle together in the morning, Belly wakes up Jeremiah from sleep and confesses what Conrad told her, that he still loves her. And Jeremiah obviously gets really upset, and he says, you know, questions whether or not she's marrying him just to get rid of Conrad in her mind and her heart. If she marries him, she thinks that somehow she'll forget Conrad and not love him anymore, which, like, she has basically confessed to in her own mind, just saying. But anyway, Belly's like, no, that's not true, that's not true. And Jeremiah is like, it is obviously true because you didn't tell me about when you saw him in Cousins. So we find out that he did know, that apparently him and Conrad were talking at one point, and he mentioned seeing Belly at the, you know, beach house, and that they hung out and, you know, slept over and stuff. Belly never told him, and he's like, obviously you kept that a secret for a reason, because you still love him. Jeremiah takes off, and by the morning, like an hour or so before the wedding is meant to start, he is still nowhere to be found. And Belly is still getting ready. She hopes that he comes back. And at that point, girl, he's given you an out. Okay, he's not showing up. So just tell the guests to leave and call it off. Her dogged fucking determination to marry this guy, even though she so obviously doesn't want to, for a multitude of reasons, is wild to me. So of course, Conrad is the one who ends up going all over town and who finds Jeremiah. And he finds him at that garden that, you know, was commemorated and dedicated to their mother. And Conrad is like, come on, man, we gotta go back. And Jeremiah is obviously pissed at him. And they end up in, like, a screaming match where they're going back and forth about who loves Belly, who treats her better, you know, all these things. And then when Conrad is the one who brings up the cheating, Jeremiah punches him and calls him a coward. And then that is when Conrad confesses that, yes, he still loves Belly, but that ultimately she chose Jeremiah. So, like, come on, man, she chose you. Let's go get married. Like, forget this. That is when Conrad, I forgot to mention this. Basically, Susanna wrote all three of them a letter to read, I guess, on, like, after she died. I think Laurel had them and she gave them to them. Conrad basically has Jeremiah's envelope and he gives it to him and he's like, Mom wrote you this. Like, and Jeremiah opens it up, he reads it right there, and he just, like, breaks down. After reading the letter, Jeremiah then looks at Conrad and tells him to get out of his life, that he doesn't want him at the wedding or in his and Belly's lives, and that he should never contact them again. And then that is when Jeremiah hands Conrad his letter from their mother, and he says that apparently their letters got mixed up. So Jeremiah had Conrad's letter, if that makes sense. The letters got mixed up, Jeremiah read Conrad's, Conrad didn't read Jeremiah's, and then gave Jeremiah his actual letter, which then Jeremiah read. So Conrad goes back to Belly, and this is like his final goodbye. He tells her that, you know, even with all of the pain and all of the heartache, loving her was worth it, but now he's going to leave, and she will never see him again. And in Belly's head, she literally says, like, this feels worse than death. Like, my heart is so fucking broken in a way it's never been broken before. Let me not talk about it. Let me not harp on it, because I just can't deal with this girl. Okay, then Jeremiah shows up not too long after, and he sits down with Belly. He explains that he got Conrad's letter, and when he read it, Susanna basically wrote to Conrad that she's only ever seen him in love one time, and that was with Belly. Jared then sort of confronts Belly in a way and says that she has never fully let him in, and he's always been second best because it's always meant to be her and Conrad, and that she is using him as like a kind of excuse not to like really be with him. And Belly's like, no, like, yes, I love Conrad, yes, I probably always will, but I chose you. And Jeremiah is like, well, it doesn't feel like you actually chose me. It feels like you're just kind of like settling for me because you and Conrad have never actually given it a go. Like, one person is always confessing their feelings while the other is denying their feelings, and they keep going back and forth and in this fucking loop that never fucking ends, and everybody's sucked into it, and I'm fucking tired of it. Jeremiah then ends, you know, his little speech and monologue by saying that he will not be Belly's excuse not to be with Conrad. And then Belly's narration kind of takes over, and we figure out that they did not get married that day. And she just kind of, you know, laments that they were just not meant to be. Then we get the epilogue. And this is when Jenny Han, like, it feels like she's already repeatedly, like, hit me with 1-2 combos left and right. Like, she has knocked me onto my ass throughout this book so many times. And now the epilogue hits. And it is the last fucking gut punch. And I don't even care about this book series. Like, imagine if you actually gave a shit about these characters. Okay, all this buildup, all this waiting, 3 books of it for Belly and Conrad to get together. Go to the epilogue. And it opens up on Susanna's letter to Belly. She's talking about, to Belly, it's your wedding day. Oh, right, she wrote the letters for them to open on their wedding day. So Belly's reading hers. Belly, I know that you look beautiful, and I hope that you married a man who is strong and makes you happy and takes care of you, and I hope that you go on all these adventures and have such a great life, and blah, blah, blah. And Belly, in her head, is like, the guy that I'm marrying is all of those things. He loves me, he's strong, and guess what? It's Conrad. Like you always wanted, Susanna. You always wanted me to, you know, marry one of your sons, and I did it. And it's Conrad. Basically, Belly explains that after her and Jeremiah broke up, she went on like a study abroad trip to Spain, and during that time, Conrad was like writing her letters. He started writing her letters, and they went back and forth, and then eventually at some point they got together, and now they're getting married. We don't see the fucking ceremony. We see none of their fucking relationship. Truly, I don't give a shit about this book, but I am so sorry to anyone who read these books when they were younger. I cannot imagine the fucking devastation of not getting to see them together at all. You just skip to this fucking epilogue. Crazy. Basically, they're on their wedding day. They leave the reception early, and they get in the car, and they're driving to Cousins Beach, and then the final, like, line or something, Belly's like, me and Conrad are together, and we're infinite. I don't know what you want me to say. I don't know what I could possibly fucking say right now, because it's so crazy. Absolutely flummoxing, flabbergasting, astonishing, fucking rip your own hair out insanity. That she would do that again. Like, I just don't understand how you can consistently skip over the shit that I'm sure your readers actually want to read about. Anyway, I'm gonna go take a fucking break before I come back and try to, like, wade through the mess that was this book and see what they could possibly adapt from it. So here's the thing. I do believe that most of, if not all, of the events from this book are going to happen in the show. Because from what I've heard, the show, while changing some things around and, you know, tweaking some things because of characterization, major events still transpired as they did in the books. And I know that Jenny Han has said that in season 3 she plans to bring book fans all of their favorite moments from the books. Also, let me just get this out of the way. Jenny Han is not changing the endgame. Absolutely not. The fact that she's so involved in the show, as a producer, as a writer, I think that even in the show, like in this book, I feel like you can tell, like, that Conrad is going to be the guy. Because just like in the books, Belly and Jeremiah are unable to exist outside of comparison with Conrad. Every time that Belly brings up her feelings for Jeremiah, Conrad has to be mentioned. And it's never the other way around. So let me get it out of the way that I'm approaching this as if they are not changing that endgame, because I really don't think that they will. But the other question then is, are they going to keep the cheating? Because I know that that has been a big point of contention for a lot of people. A lot of people are saying that, show Jeremiah would never. Other people are saying that he absolutely will, that they set him up in season 2 to be this horrible person who will cheat on her. And here's my 2 cents. I personally feel like it's a really cheap way to get everybody on Conrad and Belly's side. Like, you turn Jer into a cheater and no one's gonna fucking like him. However, I can also see in Jeremiah's characterization, even in the show, what could lead to this happening. Because it has been established in the show, especially in season 2, that Jeremiah has a lot of insecurity and resentment towards Conrad. Cheating, unfortunately, I think it's never right, but often it can be born of insecurity or in a relationship and, resentment and shit. So I can see if Belly brings up Conrad, or if Conrad gets brought up, or they're having this argument like in the book, that Jeremiah would, hook up with somebody else. I could see it happening. Would I want it to? No. What I would like to see happen is something that is kind of hinted at in the book. At one point, I didn't mention it, but at one point Belly is sort of talking about her relationship with Jeremiah, and I got the sense at least, that she is very much holding on to him because she wants to hold on to a piece of her childhood. Cousins and Susanna, those moments were so precious to her that if she feels like if she breaks up with Jeremiah or doesn't marry him, that she will lose that part of her life and of herself. That actually makes a lot of sense to me, and I think would be a very interesting thing for them to do in the show. I can actually see Jeremiah's insecurities. Maybe Conrad gets brought up. Maybe Belly has that night at Christmas with Conrad and tells Jeremiah about it, and in this moment of desperation and insecurity, he proposes to Belly. She says yes, because of that motivation of wanting to hold on to her childhood. And I think that makes sense for me, because in the show, this is like a big gripe that I have with the show, is that Belly has no identity outside of Cousins and the Fisher boys and Susanna. Belly has no experience outside of them. Like, she went immediately from Conrad to Jeremiah, and if they follow the plot of this book, she's gonna go straight back to Conrad. And when in that timeline does she know who she is? She's so determined to, like, keep the magic of Cousins alive and be with one of the Fisher boys like Susanna always told her she would be. Girl, do something for yourself. I think that it's so important, especially because this show is also, as much as it is romance, it's also coming of age, for Belly to have a coming of age tale and figure out who she is outside of Cousins. When it comes to Conrad, I hope that his storyline goes differently, because I hope that he does a lot of growing in Stanford in those 2 years when he's away. Because I believe that you can't really know who you are or your identity unless you sort of leave what's familiar to you, what's comfortable to you. Because how do you know that you really want that unless you try something else? I think similarly to Belly, who's like maybe stuck in this, relationship with Jeremiah, her identity is so like tethered to the Fisher boys and Cousins and all of that environment, Conrad has an opportunity to get away from that, to go to Stanford, to discover new things and new people, new places, new experiences. And I hope that he goes to therapy. Like, I know that that's a joke amongst the fandom, but I think that's great. I think he should. I see him being diagnosed with a generalized anxiety disorder and maybe depression. I hope that he gets on meds. I mean, maybe I'm just projecting, because, And then he comes back to Cousins, and he's just this new person, this, like, fully realized person who's, like, comfortable with himself, who asks for help, who says what he means. I do hope to see Belly and Conrad rekindle their relationship, and, I think it would be very meaningful and poignant to see Belly sort of fall in love with this new version of Conrad. She's always, like, loved him and been in love with the version of him that she has in her head since she was a child, of him being this perfect fucking person. Like, she's always had him on a pedestal. And I think it would be so much more meaningful if he were to come back this new person and she fell in love with this new version of him, this real version of him. Not the ideal that she has in her mind, but who he really is, Because I think that is also an issue in their relationship, that Belly idealizes him. I think what the show hasn't established, but what comes up in this book that I think is so fascinating, is that Belly has a very biased POV, especially when it comes to Conrad, and of course she does. In the books, there is this moment where Belly speaks to Jeremiah in this book. She tells Jeremiah, oh, do you remember, like, she brings up this childhood memory, do you remember when you did that? Like, I think it was like, there was like a bird that was hurt, and you like cried so much because you wanted to help it. And Jeremiah looks at her and is like, that wasn't me. That was Conrad. And Belly's like, no, that was you. And Jeremiah was like, no, it wasn't. That was Conrad. He wanted to help the bird, and me and Steven were there laughing at him for crying over it. And this honestly really throws Belly because she has defined herself and the people around her so much by what transpired in the past. So if she doesn't remember things exactly as they happened, then her interpretation of Conrad is wrong, of Jeremiah is wrong. And so I think that's so fascinating because I think you see in the show, especially with her and Conrad, like, we'll take that moment at the boardwalk where they go up to that girl and she's like, oh, he only brought me around because he liked that girl and wanted to talk to her. He never actually said that girl. And I think if you pay attention and try to offer Conrad some grace instead of seeing it like her, he invited you to the boardwalk. You're the one who dragged him over to this booth to talk to the girl. You're the one who commented on her shorts. You're the one who left them behind. And then Conrad went to go find you and got you that stuffed bear. But she has this like warped perspective wherein she believes that Conrad could never love her the way that she loves him. And so everything that he does gets kind of like twisted in her mind. There's also this really great scene that I hope we see in the show because I think that Adam and Conrad's relationship is so much more fraught and interesting in the show than it is in the books. There's this one part in the book where Conrad is talking to Adam and Adam sort of says, I don't want Jeremiah, I don't want to lose him the same way I lost you. And Conrad thinks to when he was young and how he did everything because he wanted to be the perfect son for his dad. Football especially. But then when he found out that his dad cheated on his mom, he was so determined. He says, I wanted to destroy everything about myself that made him proud. Even the things that I love too, like football, I didn't want him to ever feel happy again because of anything I did. And that's really fucked up and sad. Like, I read that and it was like a gut punch. I was like, ooh, this better show up in the show because this is good. And I think it makes a lot of sense the way that Conrad feels about his dad in the show. One major thing that I hope that they change is also the ending. And most importantly, I hope that they change the fact that it's Jeremiah who calls off the wedding. Because they've given Belly so much agency in the show that I think she needs to be the one to make that choice. I know that season 3 has 10 episodes. If they're trying to fit all this in, I hope that they have the wedding maybe around episode 7-ish, and I hope that Belly is the one to walk away. I think the number one thing I want for Belly is for her to find out who she is outside of this environment. And I think it would be so powerful. This is what I hope will happen. She says to Jeremiah, I don't want to marry you. And maybe his first instinct is to say, is this about Conrad? And she should say, no, this is about me. I can't marry you. And then I hope that she does do that study abroad in Spain. And I hope we actually see it. Like, genuinely, I hope that we see it. I hope that we see her experience new things. I hope that we see her find her identity outside of Cousins. And then in the end, I think that we probably will have her decide to go back to Cousins and back to Conrad. But at that point, I don't think it'll feel cheap. I think it'll feel earned because we know that this is what she truly wants because she's had time to do other things. And she's like, actually, that makes more sense for me. That's what I love. That's who I love. I want to go back to Cousins and back to Conrad. I also really hope that they show the letters being sent, or better yet, I think that Conrad should show up in Spain, like let's say, and then they have some time together and we see them once again fall in love all over again. Maybe a lot of Conrad and Belly's relationship, I understand when people say it's so much about like childhood love and blah, blah, blah. I think that's kind of because of Belly. I think Belly is very caught up in her childhood when it comes to Jeremiah and Conrad. Like, so much of her feelings for them is because of the history that they have. So it'd be so fascinating and I think so great and would make Conrad and Belly an even stronger couple and make them make sense as the endgame if we see them fall in love in this new environment, in this new setting, as new people. Their teenage selves fell in love and loved each other, and now these adult versions of themselves love each other too. That's how a relationship lasts. You have to love the person as they change and as they grow, and it would be so great to see Conrad and Belly grow and change and still choose each other and still love each other all over again. I also hope that, you know, Jeremiah and Belly get to have a conversation where they talk about their relationship. I hope that Jeremiah gets to find love. I imagine him like going on this like backpacking trip or something with a group of people in like New Zealand or Australia and like, I don't know, maybe meeting a guy and falling in love. Like, I don't know. I hope Jeremiah is happy. I think that, unfortunately, for people who are big fans of Jer, and I like Jer, but I'm not as invested in him as I am like Belly and Conrad. I think that, in a sense, with these love triangles, someone is always collateral damage. I hope that they do their best in the show to not make Jeremiah have him be too hurt by what happens, but I think Belly and Conrad are going to end up together. I really don't see it ending any other way. Yeah, I think that those are sort of my predictions / hopes for the show. That is sort of how I would write it if I was in the writer's room. Hey, call me. I don't know if you guys have already written the scripts or, you know, maybe you guys are already filming, but I got ideas. I think they're pretty good. So that is it for me today, you guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below. Go ahead and let me know, if you've read this book, what you thought of it. Let me know what you would like to see adapted, what you would like to see left on the cutting room floor and or changed. If you guys want to find me or follow me anywhere else, all of my links will be down below. I love you all so very dearly, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye!